And welcome to the Victorious Souls podcast with your host, me, Danielle Burnock from DanielleBurnock.com, that lady on the internet who loves you. Today, with my guest, Julie Kettles. Julie Kettles is an ordained minister that always aspired to help people thrive. But after she suffered multiple losses, her life was forever changed. Now she coaches, supports, and encourages those who are grieving on how to embrace the journey, make life manageable, and learn how to thrive through it all. Thank you for being with me today, Julie, and sharing your story with the world. You have so much to share.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. And Danielle was a part of my summit, and I'm honored to be here with her on her podcast. Yes, what a pleasure, what an honor.
Well, before we get into all the losses that you have sustained, give us a little bit of a background on you, Julie.
Well, I live in Newport Richey, Florida, and have since 2020. Was raised in Clearwater, Florida, and met my husband in Pennsylvania when I lived up there, and then we moved back to Clearwater years ago. But then I've been in Newport Richey, raised our 4 children here. I'm a believer in Jesus, have been since I was a teenager, and had a decent childhood. Most of my big time experiences have been being a parent, which is no picnic, as I say. But in the last 5 years, I just haven't had the worst childhood or life, but rough last 5 years.
But didn't you have some things that you brought into your marriage and stuff that you struggled with?
Yes. The biggest thing is rejection, which when you accept rejection and walk in that, yeah, it does affect your life a whole lot.
So how did that come in, the rejection?
And I also dealt with anxiety, which I think comes probably from rejection, fear of people and stuff like that. How did it come into play? I would say I experienced it more in adulthood in a way, because my sister's 8 years older than me. And I just now more so recently really got clarity that I think partly I thought my identity was partly in what she thinks of me. I didn't realize that literally until more recently. I had some dad issues too, with just my dad was very, was there for me, and he didn't abuse me, thank goodness, and present, but emotionally neglected is the way I put it. So that was part of it. So, and my love language is verbal, and my top learning style is verbal. So that played into the fact that my dad didn't talk to me much. We didn't spend much time. I don't even have like a favorite memory of being with him, although we did go on vacations, and it's not like we didn't have fun ever. But that was a lot of what I had to get over, because I wasn't heard, and then I was shut down a lot verbally. So, and I'm a person who, again, time and words is kind of the best way to show me love. So that was a big struggle for my childhood. And then kind of adulthood with my sister kind of shutting me out of her life, and then but coming back in. So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, rejection, definitely.
Oh, it sounds like that started in your childhood, because what you needed emotionally, you didn't get. So that's a form of rejection that you would feel, because it's like, I need this, I need this, I need this. But you're a kid growing up, you don't know what you need. You just know that something's not right. Like my counselor called it, something went terribly wrong. Don't know what it was, and we had to figure that out. But you're been on a path of learning all this, and but then when you got in high school, something happened to you in high school that would change the trajectory of your life. What happened to you in high school?
It did. I mean, it wasn't the outward stuff, because my parents did raise us going to Methodist church very faithfully, and they thought they were believers, as best that they knew. And my sister and my brother gave their lives to Christ outside of the home. But it was I went to the beach one night with my friends, and I tried to become agnostic, tried to say, I don't believe in God, or I'm not sure if he's there. And then I was like, I know he's there. I just don't know how to get to him. And my church didn't emphasize that the way.
That's really interesting. Can we pause there for a minute? Because a lot of times people will go from, they believe, to struggling with that because they're mad at him. or because something happened, but you have a completely different view on that because it's like you felt, wow, I'm even thinking about maybe this doesn't fit. You let me know. Like a rejection because you didn't know how to get through to him. Does that fit into that, or
I
is
never
that?
thought of it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that just came up now right here on the air.
Yeah, there's so much revelation we can get sometimes. It's very helpful. And I had a heart, and I give him glory for that heart. I'm not saying that I claim that, but I had a desire to know him, and I had a desire to find him. And I knew there was more to life than what I was experiencing. So I had all that knowledge, but yeah, it was still like, how do I get to him? So yeah, that's interesting because not everybody has that desire for him as I did. I still have all my journals with prayers to God in them, so I realize now I'm a writer. It's kind of taken that, but as a child I had journals and I would say, dear God, but he wasn't there yet, but I hungered for him. So when these guys came and witnessed and shared the gospel of Jesus at Florida Beach, and I didn't like just say, Jesus, come into my heart. I literally was like, God, is this who I've been looking for? Is Jesus the answer that I've been looking for? And the way I put it is I was wanting to know, is he the bridge to get to you, to God? And I do believe of course, he's more than just the bridge, but that is part of the way I like to share it. And so that night when they shared, I said, God, I want to know. And I was like dead serious, Danielle. I was like, I want to know, is Jesus who these people are telling me he is? Is he that answer that I've been looking for? And the next morning I woke up a different person. And he was Lord, he was Savior and Lord all at once. And I said, whatever you want me to do, wherever you want me to go, I'll go. And he showed me what job to get and ended up being with special needs. And then I eventually had a special needs son, Jordan. But, he directed me. He spoke the first time I heard his audible, like that voice inside of you, it's not audible, but yet it's loud and clear, was saying that he wanted me to go to a Christian college. And then, I found out quickly, and my mom like immediately changed and supported me in that. And I was going to go to Clemson and be a dietitian, and immediately changed over to go to Palm Beach Atlantic College and go into psychology and counseling, So he was I heard his voice clearly. And there's no way I would want to do life without him. So thankful that he saved me from my sins, as the Bible says, but also from that pit of just despair, or just life just was all gray for me. That's what I call it. It was like gray. And I was afraid of death. I was really afraid of death. I got really paranoid about death. And back in, I don't know about your school, the mushroom, the nuclear war or whatever, mushroom was like a big thing. And I would, I got to be like, oh no, I hear a plane, and I would get scared. My fear of death became very strong. And as soon as that night when my life changed, that fear just went away, like done.
Wow.
Never had it again. So I can definitely attest to that. And the Bible talks about that, by the way, but that fear of death, we don't have that. So, but he gave me immediately, like, again, it wasn't outward. I was a good girl. I didn't like doing wrong things. I wasn't a drinker. I wasn't a partier, so it was all internal. And I found my place finally. It's like, I feel like I'm finally at home. And then he led me to a church eventually too, that was like home. But I finally found where I fit. You know what I mean? And I don't think before that, I didn't know where I fit. So that was definitely, and I was a loner. I was actually really a loner as a kid. So I was able to come out of myself at that point too. And you know what I mean? Not just be in my little isolated world.
Yeah. Then so how long after that did you end up meeting your husband and getting married? Because I know that you got married, because then we go into the next part of your story. So
yes. I went to college in West Palm Beach and got my BA pretty quickly there, coming fresh out from high school at 17. So I was a young graduate. Then the Lord showed me to go on and get my BA, and my mom actually encouraged me and helped me financially to do that. So the Lord directed me to the seminary in Pennsylvania. And I was like, even though my college was Baptist, and nothing against Baptist, I just didn't want a denominational seminary. So he gave me the seminary that was Presbyterian kind of oriented, but bottom line, biblical, based on the Bible, and I loved it. But I never finished my master's because I met my husband up there, not in the seminary, but I met him up there. I won't go into the whole story. It was totally a God thing. When I saw him, I knew he was going to be my husband. And it was just because I was actually a virgin. I was a virgin, like literally. And so I just always said, God, whoever you want me to marry, I trusted God to bring that person at the right time. So we got married up there, and I got pregnant right away with my daughter, but then we moved back to Clearwater. So didn't stay up there long, although I liked being up north. And so, yeah, I met him, Steve, up there, Steve Kettles. And he was from New York and had actually left his lifestyle to change, for his life to be changed, and found the Lord in Pennsylvania. So, we both,
Life change in Pennsylvania. How long were you guys married before you started to run into trouble?
Yeah. Oh, well, I was married. I was 23 when we got married, and he was 25, right? He's 2 years older than me. And was recently saved. So he wasn't a believer that long, but he was very serious about the Lord, though. And and he had, he actually was married before and got divorced. Mm-hmm. God showed me I was going to marry somebody divorced. Yeah. I think I just needed to know that, I guess, because I thought God was going to, I don't know. I had a pretty pure mind in a lot of ways, and innocence in a lot of ways, thank goodness. But, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm marrying somebody divorced. And he was. And he actually his divorce is what brought him to his knees, because people were praying their hearts out, his sister, for his salvation. And literally it took the divorce to get him to break him, So I think that's what God knew. You know what I mean? God knows our hearts. So yeah, we came into it very much. Actually, our eyes were open. We were not like ignorant to our issues. We were in a ministry that kind of exposed your sin, or like showed that we are sinners and we need help and we need to be disciples. So we went into it, pretty realistically, but marriage is marriage. And no, we were very in love with each other and had kids quickly, not totally back to back, pretty back to back every 2 years or so. So I had 4 kids, constantly nursing and pregnant for a long time there. And, no marriage is perfectly easy, but it basically, my husband had gone through a lot of abuse. So he went through, he was given up for adoption as a baby. And then he was also given up into foster care. And there was abuse in the foster care. Yeah. And I always thought, oh, thank goodness it wasn't sexual. But the story I'm going to get to about our marriage crisis, that came out, and he did go through sexual abuse as well. So he was carrying a lot of that. Now, that doesn't mean he hadn't worked through any of it, right? But typically people don't know how to work through it, or they don't have it. They don't know if they have it. So a lot of that came into our marriage crisis. Definitely, I believe so. But he's really an awesome guy, and he could be a lot more messed up than he is. But thankfully, he was walking with the Lord. We both came together in the Lord, and that, I believe, is so important. And we knew we were meant to be. Like, we just knew it. And I believe that was part of the glue that's kept us together. And we're both faithful people too. You know what I mean? We're not the type to give up easily. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. Hopefully I answered your question.
Well, you separated for a while, didn't you?
Yes, we went through in 2017, October 1st of 2017, an event, a domestic violence event happened that I won't go into detail. It was not just a fluke thing, because I've heard plenty of people, the cops get called and it's really both get blamed, both go to jail. Thank goodness that didn't happen on my part. But he owned up to that he hurt me. He didn't totally realize what he had even done until way later when we were in counseling. He kind of went into a black hole, is the way he puts it. But it was definitely a result of unresolved things from his childhood, was a big part of it. It was also actually Hurricane Irma was part of it. And I found out hurricanes can really, stir things up or physical events like that freak everybody else. Thankfully, our state did not, get demolished and our home was fine. We chose to evacuate, but that actually played into what happened, I believe, because he kind of just totally disassociated. He also shut down a business his business, and he didn't have any goals, was part of what was going on. And the other thing that was going on is our 4th child. Okay. You can imagine 4 children back to back, getting them through school, high school, all of that, right? That's stressful.
Yeah. Let's just pause there for a minute.
Yeah.
Of unresolved childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Hurricanes going on. And the stress of being a new dad and it being a second marriage too. So that's going to play into it in some way because there was stress that, I mean, there's a reason why the first one fell apart. So that's going to have side effects to it. Not to bring out any dirt. It's just a natural thing. So no wonder he hadn't dealt with it in ways he needed to. So listener, you got stuff going on in your life, please deal with it. Talk to someone, do something about it.
Yes.
Because when you don't, if you keep shoving it down, it's gonna burst out in some capacity. I can't say how. There's lots of different ways it does it.
Sure.
Does it through your own health. You hurt other people. You hurt yourself. Lots of different things. So please, if you know you got stuff going on in there, maybe you don't even know what it is, but you feel that gray or you feel chaos or you feel just unrest inside, reach out for help, please. So,
Yes.
and you guys ended up getting back together. You worked through that. You guys both worked on
Yes.
yourselves. You got back
Yeah,
together. And so were you good and strong together before the pandemic hit?
Oh, the pandemic. Oh,
Yeah, before. I mean, you went
Yeah.
through your whole thing and you were
Yeah.
separated for a while and then you
Yes, we
worked
were
on
separated by
yourselves.
law for a year and a half because it took them a while to get into the domestic violence program here in Florida. And then believe it or, you know, as we progressed, I went to the judge to ask for the phone when I felt ready for it. I asked for counseling and they actually gave it to us. Found out that's unusual. You know, then I asked for it to be shortened, but they didn't shorten it. So it was a year and a half. The reason why we were able to come back healthily, I'm just going to say this in a nutshell, is that Steve took ownership of what he did. He did take personal responsibility, taking personal responsibility for our own actions and our own stuff, despite what our spouse, especially in marriage, right? Marriage is the closest relationship you can talk about that's a committed relationship where you can say, well, that, you know, my wife, my husband, blah, 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 blah. When we take ownership for our own stuff, that's when there's hope. And he did. He took responsibility for what he did. I took responsibility for my side of it and, you know, worked on me. I went through a 12-step program, went through a coaching program and other things. And so I kind of found myself again because I was an empty nester now. In the midst of that, I still had Jordan, my son with Down syndrome, home. But that crisis actually enabled him to qualify to get help, which we didn't qualify before that. So, hey, something good came out of it there in a sense, because he wanted his independence and he was ready to move out. Now he's back living home with us again. But, you know, for that period, I needed that break. He wanted to go and, you know, it was time. So I was an empty nester for the first time in a lot of my life, right? That was huge. So we both worked on ourselves. We both, you know, went to the Lord. He found another church. Like we obeyed the law. A lot of people don't, by the way. We obeyed and stayed apart and did what we were supposed to do. And then we were able to come together in counseling after a certain period of time. So not that we were perfect, but we did, I believe, all the crucial things that needed to be able to come back together. If it was not going to be healthy, I would not have come back together because I did learn more about that. And there was some codependency there, not like horrible, but there was codependency there. And I learned how to deal with that and what that was, et cetera. So yeah, we came back together the spring, the April of 2019, right? Make sure I'm saying my dates right. And really we're only together for a few months before my daughter's situation came into play. And I actually got my coaching certificate that summer and so forth. So that's the gist of that. And so I felt very safe. Like I didn't for the whole time, like the year and a half was good. Actually, it was really good. We were apart for a year and a half. And then I felt safe and good. And we got back together in a good spot. We started off with a marriage conference and everything. So counseling. So we really did it all good. And that's why we're still strong. We're still good. We always got to work on marriage, but we're good. You know what I mean?
So that's such a story of hope. A story of hope for those who are struggling in their marriage. They have different things. And like you said, if they will own it, then you can fix it. If it gets broken, you can fix it when it gets broken, if both parties will take ownership of what belongs to them. Blaming and all that other stuff, it's not going to work.
It's not. No, we really do have to. I mean, it doesn't mean there's not real stuff on the other side. And we do have to recognize that too, because sometimes we just beat ourselves up. for stuff that is that other person stuff, and their issues. So I think it's really learning to decipher that, but then, okay, here's my issues, or why am I in a relationship that's like that? And I know you know what I'm talking about, Danielle. So, it is. And that sets us free, because the Bible talks about the truth will set you free. But I believe it's, yes, the word of God, completely the word of God can set us free, right? But I think it's the truth about ourselves too. I think it's, God revealing who we are and what we need to do is part of it. So, yeah.
So in 2020, everyone was going through this global pandemic, shutting down everything, but you had something different going on in your life at the same time. Tell us about that.
Yes. A few months after my husband and I got together, my daughter Heidi, who's my only daughter, who was living in Tennessee at the time with her kids and her boyfriend, 4 children, or 3 at that point. She was pregnant with the 4th. They ended up in foster care because of, foolish choices she made, that do look like they were drug related at the time, but we don't know the whole story. But bottom line, they were in foster care, and she and her boyfriend, of course, were working their plan, and we were going up there as much as we could to be supportive, because the kids, of course, their world was turned upside down. And thankfully, they were in a beautiful Christian home with a family that was just wonderful, who would have adopted them eventually when the whole thing happened, but couldn't. But anyway, so Heidi ended up in jail on somewhere in January, February of 2020. And again, foolish decisions. And her boyfriend, it was kind of like Heidi was getting caught, her boyfriend was not. That's kind of what was happening. Yeah. So, so basically I was in touch with her as much as I could. It's not easy. It costs a lot of money to talk to people in jail. But she had said, her boyfriend had actually said this before that, one other time when I talked to him, that he knew that they needed to part ways because they just weren't helping each other. They couldn't help each other. They were humongously codependent, very in love with each other, all that, but very codependent on each other. And so but when she was in jail was the first time she told me, Mom, I know I need to be away, or I shouldn't be around him anymore. I'm not going to say his name, but just, I shouldn't be around him anymore. And so she told me that. And yet, on March 27th, approximately, basically she had told me, and so had his mom told me, because his mom and I were friends at the time, kind of, and she lives down here, that he was going to turn himself into jail and then bail him right back out with the income tax return money from the kids. So that was the plan, right? Now Heidi had also told us that she was like happy she was making girlfriends, which she really didn't have that many girlfriends anymore in her life. She was pretty much isolated with him. So she was happy. I mean, no, nobody's happy to be in jail, but she was happy she was making girlfriends. We could see some positive changes even in that short time. And I didn't even think she'd get bailed out. There was no question. She didn't ask us to. So we thought she was going to be in for a while, and she was finally away from him. So all of a sudden, his mom calls me on, I guess that was the 28th or the 1st. No, that wouldn't be the 1st. It would have been the 27th, I guess. And she calls me and she's frantically saying, Julie, he didn't just bail himself out. He bailed out Heidi too. And she's like all stirred up about it. And when she said that, Danielle, I had the worst gut feeling I've ever had in my life. Like literally. I mean, I've never felt that. And I had warned Heidi that if she didn't change some ways that I won't go into. She stole my credit card when I went up to visit her at the November before that, and other things. There was a lot of stuff that week when I was with her. There was some good things. She was getting closer to me and reaching out towards me and saying he was unhealthy, and she knew she needed to get away from him. But then she was also still doing, it was just weird. A lot of evil, weird stuff was going on, and I didn't even know all what was going on. So when that gut feeling happened, it was like a warning inside of me saying something bad was around coming. But that was in my gut, but my mind didn't totally know, you know what I'm saying? So then, like, as soon as I hung up the phone, I had to call my friend just to calm down. I was so upset. And just as I was calming down, Heidi calls me and she's like, hi, Mom. And she had a deep voice like mine, and her voice is higher. And I knew she was under the influence of something. And so I said that, but she didn't admit to it. But then she's like, oh, he's being so nice. I think we're going to get married finally. Just like she trusted him again. And she's like, oh, we're partying. And I'm like, well, how long are you going to do that? She was very strong-willed. So I did not have much say in her life ever. You know what I mean? So it's not like I could have said a lot. So then we talked the longest time that day, and and then her dad the next night, without going into the whole detail on that. Then late into the next night, her boyfriend, her decided to party. I say just one more time. Just one more time. They decided to party. And in the middle of the night, she overdosed on fentanyl, cocaine laced with fentanyl. Her boyfriend knew that he bought fentanyl. And so he's guilty. He's actually on the run and wanted. Don't know if they'll ever catch him or her death. But basically she was flown to a Nashville hospital. He basically did all kinds of things wrong, didn't have Narcan, et cetera, et cetera. But he decided to do CPR on her and call the ambulance. So thank goodness he did that. At least it's the only thing we can contribute to him. And she was taken to a Nashville hospital, and we were able to say goodbye to her body. But they tried, but this was on Sunday. We got there on Monday, and basically we could tell her body was just an empty shell. And then on Tuesday, everything was on me because they weren't married. So they said, do you want us to do this test and see if there's no more blood flow to her brain? If there isn't, she'll be declared legally brain dead. And so I did. I elected for the test, and it came back with no blood flow. So she was declared, brain dead. And the only thing good out of that was that she had done what I encouraged my kids to do, is be donors. So she was able to give 4 people life through that. So
wow, even with the drugs in her system, she was still able to donate parts of her body.
Yeah. And
wow.
My church is a very believing church, believes in miracles. My pastor will not let anybody testify unless it's a doctor verified, which I think is really wise. But as soon as the word got out that my daughter, this had happened through a friend that I called, I'm sure the word spread and many people began to pray. So all those prayers were praying for a miracle, of course, right? That she'd come back, she'd be okay. But I kind of knew it even had God showed me ahead. And I knew we were going to know on Tuesday, and that was that day. And so when I realized myself, like, oh my gosh, maybe she can be a donor, it like gave my husband, I hope, for 1 second. And then when the lady came in and said, here's the paperwork, she's still like, here it is. She chose to be a donor. And then we signed off on some other things too. But I believe that's part of the miracle. I even said this, Danielle, I went like this. I said, Lord, take all those prayers that everybody's praying and send them on to the donors. And God and lead who gets the organs, and her heart went over 10 minutes without oxygen. And yet they were able to, it was partly the medicine. They gave, whatever they do in the hospital, they did stuff to help the heart, but still, I believe that was God, because just like you said, she could have not been, the brain death actually was in a sense, an ideal way to be a donor for the rest of the parts, because of brain death. I mean, it's actually something that horrible. It's like hard to say positive out of it, but it was. And we actually know the only female that got one of her kidneys. We know her, and she's in our life. She's so grateful, so that's a whole nother story. But I say there's a very powerful word, number 4. I never thought the number 4 was that big of a deal. I love the number 3. I love the number 7. But I gave 4 children life. She gave 4 children life, and she gave 4 people life in her death. So I say that numbers becomes very significant to me. But so her children, I left the hospital, numb and in shock. I mean, you're numb, you're in shock. You have to be to protect yourself. I mean, you just lost your child. And then I went to her children right after that, which helped in one way, but I had to then try to tell her oldest, who was a girl, her mom was gone. And so
how old was she?
5 at the time.
The oldest was 5?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. And then the next girl too. And I wasn't trying to tell her. And then she accidentally saw a picture. It was just, and the boys.
They all need to be told. I mean, that they have cognitive, I mean, even the baby's age, whatever. How young was the youngest one?
Well, she had the baby while they were in foster care, and they didn't automatically take the baby.
Mm,
It was a boy. So there's two girls and two boys.
mm,
And so the baby was not automatically, but what happened is Heidi had, and this is when she wasn't in touch with me much, but she had gotten the flu or something and decided that cocaine was going to help her get her energy back. Or her boyfriend did, whoever made the choice, he went and bought cocaine. And then she breastfed the baby. And this is where she was going down more, even though she
mm,
still had the hope with having the baby, she was just, this is part of my speech that I'm going to be sharing, where she went wrong. Like she didn't take responsibility. Her perspective was totally negative. Like the system has control and the system is this big thing. She wasn't looking at what she could do, even
mm,
though the system was telling her, work your program and get your kids back. She
mhm.
wasn't focused on the hope and the good. She chose to go more deeper into drugs because she was
Yeah.
depressed about losing her kids. So it just spiraled down even more. Where the fentanyl came in, that we don't know if she knew that there was fentanyl in there, but she had already taken cocaine. I think she just thought it was the cocaine, but I'm not sure. And that is a common problem today. Everybody who's listening to this really needs to know that all, I'm not saying every drug has fentanyl in it every time. I'm saying that every drug out there, even marijuana, is having fentanyl being put in it now. It is huge, a huge problem, a huge scare. It is not being taken on purpose, is what I'm saying a lot of the
Mm,
time, and people are dying all
yeah.
over the place. It's a terrible epidemic. So I could go on and on about that, but I do want to let your listeners know that to beware of any kind of drug. Even, and I thought, oh, it's probably, now vaping is not good for you. And I knew that, but I thought it probably hadn't gotten in vaping. And now I've heard it's even being put in vaping. So
Wow.
it is very, very scary. So
Then what
she,
happened with the four kids after she died?
she, they moved on to another home. There was one other little home in between that wasn't even worth talking about really, but they moved on to another family that eventually was asked that if we couldn't get custody of them, because we were already we were just in the beginning stages of trying to get them when she was alive, because the system, doesn't want them in foster care if they can connect them with family. The reason
Hmm.
why they weren't put with us automatically is because we didn't live in Tennessee. You know what I
Mm,
mean? We would have been considered right away if we were like living in Tennessee.
mm,
So we were, already being asked, we were already considering that. But this other family was asked in the midst of it, and would you adopt them if nobody else can or won't, right? And they said they would, and that's who has them. But
mm,
basically, to be going through losing your daughter who has four children, young children, um, in the middle of the pandemic, and just trying, like deciding, making that big decision. Are we going to try to get custody of them? Like four. Whew, I thought I was an empty nester. I started to like being an empty nester. Deciding to do that. Then eventually my sister offered to take two because she was actually becoming foster licensed.
mm,
So it ended up that we asked before Heidi died if they would be open to that. No, because they always want to keep the kids together. After she died, they became open to the idea. Long story short, we went into that together as my sister and I, or my sister and her husband, her family, and us,
mm,
all four, doing two and two. And they okayed it. But what happened is we had an unfounded accusation in our past. And Steve did have, my husband did have the domestic violence thing still there. We didn't know we could have had that expunged. Now it is. So there was things that we didn't get told that could have helped us possibly to get them. But bottom line, it was that thing from the past that was not,
mm,
it was an unfounded thing. That's the thing they said was the main clincher. It wasn't even the domestic violence incident that happened between him and I. So we were denied. Then we were eventually told it's this whole event, even though it happened in about a year, this whole between her death and all of what I'm talking about, it I could easily write a whole book on it and talk about all the details of it. And then COVID dragging everything out, as I'm sure anybody remembers, trying to get things done during COVID, you know what I'm saying, was crazy. So that drug everything else, because like my daughter didn't have her birth certificates. So those had to be reordered. And one of the kids' dad had never signed the birth certificate. So he had to get, so just everything getting drawn out and then to be denied and then to be cut out. and even the ad litem saying you're not party for case, they shouldn't even get one more visit. And the caseworker, who was a wonderful lady, a little ignorant in ways, but wonderful lady, her saying no, they deserve one more visit. And the adoptive parents, who were the ones who had them for that 9 months, saying you better take your last visit. We don't know if we're going to let you in their lives after this. And I also found out legally last minute that we could have had an open adoption in Tennessee as grandparents because our daughter was dead. And dad was also pretty much out of the picture, but they had to go through all that, of course. And he had 5 counts against him. So, to be told that, like to say, oh my gosh, we could possibly open adoption, like, you think, because God's a God of 1159s, right, Danielle? Sometimes God doesn't reverse things if he's going to reverse them or, do a miracle or whatever it is until the last minute, right? So I was like thinking maybe that was going to happen. And no 1159, but it could have, because I'm going, well, or at least open adoption. There's some guarantee, right? No, they said, we're not going to do that. So I had to go, we had to fully let go of our grandkids.
Wow. So you lost your daughter and then all your grandkids all in 1 year when everyone's
not grieve with my grandkids. That was the hardest part. I wanted to love on them and hold them and touch them. And even when we were trying to get them, it was the system between us.
Yeah.
I mean, and we were in Florida and Tennessee, so that was part of it too. There was distance physically too. We went up there as much as we could, but so, but still you're thinking you're going to finally get them and be able to embrace them and love on them and mourn together, and can't.
Wow. So how did you deal with that? How did you get through that time in your life?
Breathe.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
That's a lot of emotion.
It is. Doesn't always come out, but sometimes it just does. During the marriage crisis, Danielle, there was kind of 3 key things that, and kind of finding myself again, and not in the literal sense, but in the sense of raising kids. You do kind of lose yourself if you're being a good mom and you're constantly taking care of them. You're not always taking care of yourself the way you need to, and so during that marriage crisis and having more time for me and to work on me, and wow, like first time alone. I mean, once Jordan moved out, kind of in the midst of it, it was like weird, like a dichotomy, but it was good too. Like I liked it too, because it was like, I can work on me. So to learn self-care was part of that. And the one coaching program I was in taught me self-care, and that was good for me, and that, it was okay. And that was right to have self-care. Another thing was, my mental health, that was a biggie, because I believe in taking care of yourself physically, and you have to, and all of that. I believe in exercise. I believe in nature, and all of just so many things physically I believe in. But the mental health, I knew the Lord, so I drawed on my foundation with Him. I'll start with that. I had a strong foundation in the Lord. I've had, I had learned what trust was the best I knew how at that point, and believe that trust is deeper than faith. Trust is is saying, I trust you, God, and I'm going to declare you as good no matter what. And I'm declaring you as loving, no matter what I'm going through, no matter what I feel. I'm going to believe that you're good. I'm going to believe that you're God. I'm going to believe that in your word. I'm going to believe in your promises, no matter what I feel, no matter what it looks like, no matter what's going on. And I didn't jump to blame Him. Instead, I wanted to work into the good. And it's one of my favorite promises is Romans 8:28. God works all things to the good for those who love Him or called according to His purposes. So that was one of my favorites, I think, for a lot of my years as a believer. And so I immediately wanted to work good in whatever this was going on. And then to have your daughter die from something so horrible, from a drug, at such a young age of 27, it's like, you either decide to sink or swim. You either sink or swim, or what are you going to do? So my word became thrive. It's one of my words. And, a lot of people use the word resilience. There's a lot of good words out there, right? But thrive is kind of my word. That's why I call myself Thrive Coach. I decided to not just survive, that I wanted to survive, but I wanted to thrive. And I just knew I had to turn her death into something good. I just couldn't just leave it like that. I would have lost hope if I didn't, you know.
Mm.
So that was my determination to do that. I think was a really big key, because if you determine to do things, you can figure out the how,
Yeah.
as you go along. And then being teachable. I've always been a teachable person, so I was willing to get coaching and advice, but
Hmm.
at the same time make my own decisions and know that I'm autonomous. I'm responsible for me, and I still got to know from with God's help and my own wisdom, am I making right decisions, so I'm very big on that. I think is a good thing too. But then, so the mental health thing, part of that came in with the 12 steps. I did the 12 steps, and the serenity prayer really, really stood out to me. And so I began to really get to know that prayer. I'd heard of it, but never thought anything really big of it. And the 12 step I went through was through Celebrate Recovery, hurts, habits, and hangups. It's not because you have to be an alcoholic or drug addict or deal with those biggies, just having your own hurts, habits, and hangups. That's what I went into it. And so I went into it to work on me more. And that serenity prayer really stuck out to me. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then the rest of it is beautiful too. So you read the whole thing, look it up. Beautiful prayer. And then I learned about, during my grandkids, before they got adopted, the adoptive mom, who was the foster mom at that time, invited me to be a part of my granddaughter's counseling. And long story short, I kind of got confronted about some stuff, not in a mean way, but when you're grieving, and it was kind of like how I was grieving, and something about I was talking about my daughter too much. I didn't even think I was, but hello, I lost my daughter. you know, so in that, I got a little frustrated, feeling like, all eyes were on me, as you can, I'm sure, imagine, Danielle. And it was like, but then I got this one-on-one session, and I agreed to it with the counselor. I'm like, okay, God must be trying to teach me something through it. So I got beyond what I thought was me getting rejected or whatever. And I said, God must be trying to show me something. And she ended up talking about the circle of control. I was like, never had heard of it. So then eventually the Lord showed me how that kind of goes together, because the serenity prayer is that inviting God in, looking beyond yourself, at least, to understand the difference between what's in your control and out of your control, what you can change and what you can't change.
Hmm.
I mean, what's in your decisions and in your realm of influence or decision, or what's not. And so I really grabbed a hold of that at that time in my life, but that came really strong into play with the whole grandchildren thing, walking through COVID and trying to get custody and doing everything I could, everything I had to try to get us to get approved, knowing that I did know that thing in the past, I didn't know if it would come up. I didn't know if that would, be a determining factor. And nobody said it would. So I said, God, this is another thing I did, Danielle. I said, God, you know whether we're supposed to raise these kids or not. You know if your plan has this. And if it's your plan, I've already accepted that. I'm already willing to do that. It's not going to be easy, but I'll do it. But if it's not, then I know you can shut the door, and you can take that thing from the past, and it could either go either way. So I believe that's part of why I didn't blame God or get so mad and get more hung up in this and more stuck in all of this, Danielle, is because I really did put my trust in the Lord with what the end verdict was going to be. It didn't make it all easy, but it did help me not to get stuck in the blame or all of that a lot of people get stuck in. So so that serenity prayer and circle of control is like the foundation of my coaching program. I think it's really important, and I'll go on about that. And then the other thing was declarations, what I spoke over. I learned to speak life over myself. Even before that, before the marriage crisis, I did. And I went to women's ministry. And one of my favorites is, you're more than a conqueror through Jesus, or through him who loves you. I'm more than a conqueror through him who loves me. And that's in Romans 8:37. And so I would quote, I'm more than a conqueror. I'm more than a conqueror, And then in the marriage crisis, I began to get more into the word and more into, adding more into that, and knowing who I am in the Lord and who he is in me and who he is, and so that grew more on that. And then I went into a coaching program literally on the day that I said goodbye to my grandkids. I signed on. I did this like online thing, and I won a little scholarship with this woman who was my coach. And then I, went through praying about it, talking to my husband. It was a big investment, biggest investment I've ever made, And so all of that, and I literally signed the dotted line when I said goodbye to them. And I said, this is something in my control. I have to let go of my grandkids. It's out of my control, whether they're going to let me be in their lives. And Steve and I, but I'm talking for myself,
Right.
it's out of my control. I can't, I've already asked them if they would even be open to adoption. They said, no, I can't control them. I can't influence them.
Right.
Do I believe I belong do I believe my grandchildren need me? Because they said, we got to do what's best for the kids. Well, of course, in my mind, well, of course it's best for the kids. But I had to just zip my lip and pray. And it was like the biggest test that a mother or a woman or grandma could ever go through was what I went through, really. And I just, so I said, here's what's in my control. I'm going to do this program. I know I need to do this program. I actually did workshops during COVID and during all this. I actually did a workshop in the midst of online workshop. I did a speaking program. I didn't quit the speaking program. I finished the speaking program. In fact, when she died, I said, I am not going to quit this. Other things got put aside that I did in church and stuff like that, my signing and my dancing, which is a big thing of what I'm gifted to do and I love to do. That got put aside. But I did the coaching program, the speaking program, and I conquered my fear, Danielle. I thought I was not called to speak, even though I'm an ordained minister. I'm an ordained minister through my church as a woman. And I didn't think I had the gift to speak. But that lie got overcome because I stepped out and I did that speech and I worked so hard on it. And I said, my daughter's my next speech. And so that drive to do something that I had believed the enemy's lie. I had believed a lie that because of being shut down and that rejection stuff, from my childhood, I was like, no, I've got to do this. So I learned that as a young kid, that if you can, even when you're scared to death to talk in front of people or whatever, if you have something you're really passionate about, that you're talking about, that is so important, you could do it. And that's just really where I'm at.
Yeah. So it's like you hung on to something and that's what kept your head above water during all that. And then you poured yourself even more into it, which is how you're thriving now and you're helping other people. How are you helping other people with with your coaching and stuff? What are all the things that you have to offer?
A lot of, this is what I learned through whatever coaching program it was, just that you help people that are like you, what you struggle with. But it really is, I've had some of my clients, say like, you help me dig out of a pit, there's different ways of just, being stuck in your grief. I love helping people get unstuck. I call my program Move Through Your Mourning, MOURNING. So like, everybody's at their own pace. There's no competition here. There's no comparison. Comparing is bad. But so it's not about saying that there's one formula because everybody grieves different. Every person is unique. We have our own thumbprint, right? And our soul and our stories, our childhood, all of it, we're so unique, but yet we can relate to each other. That's what's beautiful too, is people who have lost somebody that really hit home and changed their life forever. That's the best way that I can put it, because I lost my grandparents, but it didn't devastate me, right? My mom died and that wasn't easy. But when I lost my daughter, it was a different story, right?
Yeah.
It changed my life forever, So when you experience that loss that changes your life, right? Or rocks your world or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you get with other people, any loss, you relate, you come together and you make friends with people you would have never made friends with in grief, and then you might lose friends. You might lose that. There's also a falling away of people, and you learn who really is healthy for you. And that's important, to have that self-care of finding support and building relationship with people that who understand you, that aren't going to judge you or shut you down or tell you to get over it, is a common thing. Or shouldn't you be over it already?
Yeah.
All kinds of things people say that they don't understand. So that is a huge part of self-care. And I COVID, actually, I didn't have that very much in my hands because COVID. I didn't have that. I didn't get hardly any cards. I think all the more that my relationship with the Lord thank God I had that foundation. My husband and I, because we already went through the crisis we did and we made it through. See, a lot of people, marriages fall apart with losing a child. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think because we already went through that major crisis and we came back together, not perfectly, but healthily and humbly, knowing what we had to work on, we were okay. And
Wow.
so that, I've had people ask me that, and I was like, huh, well, the story's different again, but no, we were okay. But I know people, a lot of it was the prayers. People were praying strongly for us, and I could feel those prayers. So did I have the peace that I had previously before all that? No. But did I have a supernatural peace? Yes. I did have an element of supernatural peace through all of that. That was definitely God, and so that just how do I help people? I teach them the thrive. I teach them how to declare the word of God over themselves. I love doing that because I love doing that over myself. I have like almost 50 index cards with different declarations from the word, but also like my coach told me this one, God's got this, so I've got this. That's a good, simple one I just love. God's got it, so I've got it. And you can just growing in that through that year of letting go of my grandkids, I grew and I deepened those declarations because my coach helped me to up level, and that's what I say. And just you can make them so specific to whatever your goal you're trying to do in life, or where you just know you believe a lie about yourself and you shouldn't believe that lie anymore. So those were huge for me. So really working on mental health with them and giving them practical daily things to manage their lives, because so many people, their lives are just unmanageable. So I help them to grasp those daily things that they need to do. Get out in nature. Nature was huge for me. Huge,
Wow.
like a health pill is what I just said to somebody. It was my medicine. It was like, gotta get nature.
Yeah.
I
Nature therapy is what I call it. I love going for a
yes,
walk when you need a mental health break, just going outside, just
yes,
being by trees, flowers, wherever you can find it, even just the sun shining in the sky.
yes, yes. And I'm telling you, it was like I was soaking it in. It was like God showed me. I was just like, had to have it. And now I
Mhm.
don't need it as much. Am I always going to love it? Oh yeah. My husband and I love to hike. So we've gone to more springs in Florida, and, like got to find more nature, and, I'll always be about it, but I don't need it as much as I did because it was like medicine. It was like
Yeah,
healing medicine for me. So yeah,
therapy.
just learning to make their lives manageable, and find that support. And I have my own support group at my church that I lead, and that's helped me because as you help others, it helps you, and
Amen.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
all been good.
Well, is there anything that you want to just, before we end this, that something you want to just make sure that people hear something from your heart?
Um, Again, if you're grieving, know that you're not alone. Yes, we're all unique, and nobody should say they completely understand your exact story because it's just not realistic. But you're not alone. You're not alone, and you're not the only one feeling what you're feeling, and you're not crazy.
Amen.
Yeah, because we go through all kinds of things, and I love like sharing that with people. They go, "Oh, really? That's normal, or that's common?" Yeah, no. Oh, wow. It's like liberating. Really, it is. And it takes off some of that overwhelm stuff that's there. So those are some of the things. And one of my mentors, Gary Rowe, who I'm pretty sure you know about him. He was one of my speakers for the summit that's become a mentor to me. He says, be kind to yourself.
Be
Be kind
kind
to
to
yourself.
yourself. Yes.
Don't
Be
be too,
kind to yourself.
yeah, like it's good. Even in the midst of your grief to have some kind of a goal, even if it's just, I want to survive this, or I want to, whatever it is, just simple goals. So it's good to
Mhm.
eventually have goals, but don't be hard on yourself about it. And give
Amen.
yourself patience and kindness. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
That,
thank you for sharing all this with us today. What a lot that you have been through and how you have moved through that and how you're thriving and helping people. Thank you for how you're helping others. And how can people connect with you if they want to, be part of your support group or get coaching from you or learn from you in some way? How can they connect with you?
well, I have this QR code behind me if people can pull that in, but it's juliek.org. So Julie Kay. Well, if they see the name, I don't know if they see that on there, but it's juliekay.org. And Julie K Kettles is my full name, so that's on some of my social media at Julie K Kettles. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, mostly those two. And I also have a YouTube channel. It's Julie K. Kettles. And so I do weekly messages, I call them, where I share my story, and we're talking about expectations right now. And definitely it's going to be more grief oriented this year because I'm more ready to do that now. And it's going to, yeah. So definitely if you want just practical help with grief, go to my YouTube channel.
Oh, well, thank you again for being with us today, Julie. And thank you,
Welcome. Thank you.
audience, for listening. Thank you for giving us your time. And I love you. That's why I share these stories with you and these people with you and their hearts with you, because we love you. I love you. I'm that lady on the internet who loves you. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.